Can these three players win against all odds in the Chinese superweapon, otherwise known as the 121B? Let's find out in today's video and see how you can play it, whether you should pick this up for bonds, and of course what this tank is all about. Kicking off today's game, we do have one on Pilsen, and Pilsen being a map that is predominantly one where you kind of have to push, or at least be somewhat aggressive within the game to get those ridiculous results, and this one is by far a ridiculous result, starting off with the perfect opportunity, which is a tank that is AFK in the base. So it's some nice easy damage, and of course just farms him up till he's taken out. And with that guy taken out of the game, it means that he can press on to the rest of the opponents within this game. So he makes an aggressive push towards the cap circle, which obviously alerts people to his presence in the cap, but it also allows him to start pushing towards the opponents. Now they don't seem to be wanting to fire, and so he's able to get a few shots into the tortoise and his kin that are also playing over on this flank. Now, with the majority of the tanks on the enemy team in their sort of base area, he needs to be making sure that what he doesn't do is expose himself to anyone that might be playing in this location in the middle, because potentially there could be some people pushing up, and as well as the fact that some of these boys on the left hand side might actually try and turn around, which would be pretty devastating. And talking about devastating, that would be something like a Batchat trying to clip you in the side. But straight off the bat, he's been able to pick up quite a bit of damage, and although he's played it fairly riskily with regards to pushing into this location, and with the enemy team looking pretty bot-like, to be honest, yeah, he's able to secure at least a victory, a minor one, against the enemy object 283 there, which is good. But the game is still young, and we're going to see how he can turn it from a game which was, you know, potentially lucky into a game where he definitely showed off the real skill and true power of this tank. Now what happens here is a bit of a miracle, and that is the fact that the 121B has decent armor, and in fact the 121 has very decent armor for a medium tank, and that is because it has the typical Soviet medium tank armor where it's very well sloped on the upper plate, which can lead to a couple of bounces during the games, but it also has that pack-a-punch with regards to its alpha damage, and of course playing as a 390 alpha medium at this tier allows you to really do well, and combine that with the fact that it's a Chinese tank with a little bit of gun depression makes it a whole lot better. And so the 121B really starts to kick out damage when it can find opponents caught out in the open, and you've seen that within this game as he's just able to use the accuracy of the tank, which is pretty decent, to be able to farm up some of these tanks getting easy shots like that Super Conqueror side of the turret, and of course just trying to get those snapshots against whoever he can during this game. Now the HE rounds of this tank do get 105 pen, which allows you to deal a decent amount of damage to any of those lightly armoured targets, and he's been able to fire off 2 rounds today to be able to get that extra bit of damage. And although I wouldn't necessarily recommend having tons of HE rounds, they are useful for those lightly armoured targets, and of course you can end up doing a little bit more damage overall. Things like the FE 4005, the Gorilla, the Waffle E100, those sorts of vehicles, very nice to have, and when you're coming up against them you can really punish them super hard if they overcommit or do anything like that. But of course, talking about overcommitting, the T95 comes out of his little hidey hole and actually manages to expose that side armor, or at least the upper side armor, if you get what I mean. He's able to just go straight through it, and that is one of the perks of being the 121B, is that often you can do these quick shots, so you're not having to, you know, delay yourself if you were playing in something like the 113 or some of the heavily armored vehicles that don't quite have the gun statistics that the 121B has. So that's really where I feel like this tank comes into its element, where it is just capable of pushing out that damage, but also being able to bounce a few rounds in between, and using the decent turret armor, although not crazy, can also bounce quite a few rounds too. Now the game starts to come to a close, and having picked up 9,500 damage with quite a bit of damage blind at the beginning of this game, I expect the 121B is now starting to think, well, I need to push in to get even more damage, and ooh, a standard B, even nicer, and he finds one into the back of him, or the front even, and then manages to get one into the back of the turret of the 705, which is perfect. Can he get one more in before the 705 reloads and turns around? Yes, he can, and then it's just an FV sat at the back on a decent amount of hit points that hopefully doesn't hit him from here. Maybe he's gone undetected at this point, but yeah, luckily avoids the FV's shot. Just has to be careful and hope that the FV doesn't have enough U range to spot him here, as it could be quite easily just a splash to take him out. But fingers crossed it's all going to go well, and he's going to be able to find one more shell to bring his damage total over 12,000 for this game, which indeed does happen, as you saw from the beginning. And the FV does get spotted, he gets one more into him, and although it says 10,800 because of the blind damage, it's far more, and what a great result. Of course, there's plenty more to come up in the next games where we see this tank in even more chaos, like we saw in the beginning of this game where everyone was YOLOing. Now, the first player absolutely crushed opponents in the first game on Pilsen, and of course we're going to see that in this one game. But first, if you could crush that like button, that would be much appreciated me, as it massively helps out the channel. And of course, if you want to see more content, it lets me know what sort of content you actually want to see. Now, this game on Mannerheim Line is certainly not your usual game on Mannerheim Line, because of the fact that no one actually ended up going in this location here, or at least hasn't yet been spotted, which allows the 121B to use the strategy of just slowly working his way around to be able to spot the potential tank destroyers who are located in G4 and a kind of a G3, F4, that sort of area. And of course that's going to allow you to get free shots into them, and of course you can get hold down as well, which makes it a massive bonus, and you're going to be able to provide yourself with a little bit of spotting at the same time, which is great for those marks of excellence if you're going towards them. And talking about spotting, there you go, he manages to spot 3 of the enemy team, which is amazing, and he's able to not only get a shot of damage in, but he really puts the enemy team in a bit of a pressure situation, and he shuts down the 50B on their team, meaning that these FVs are going to be in for a real pain of a time as he starts loading those HE rounds. As we spoke about in the first game, 105 pen, more than enough to go through the top of the turret of the FV, especially when it's angled like this. This is what you want, and unfortunately they are going to find themselves in a horrific situation, and with poor accuracy on the FV, yeah, I feel almost bad for them if it wasn't for the sake that they're playing the FV. But either way, 2,900 damage so far, and a little bit of assistance, which you know, can only go up from here. And given the fact that his friendly team are still sat back, and with the enemy team actually up on hit points because of the fact that they've been pushing towards the base, he is now in a bit of a kind of decision making process. Does he continue the push on this side, which at this point can become a little bit tedious because you got to push into TDs who have repositioned themselves to show your weak points when you start pushing up to this location here. So it's really a case of, is he going to go back? Is his team going to be able to deal with those tanks that are going to go back, or is he going to find himself ending up doing nothing because the enemy team actually die by the time he gets there? So these are all the things that he's probably thinking in his head right now, and currently just working on tearing apart these little heavy tanks and tank destroyers that have been sat in base all game, and hopefully it's going to end up quite well. The only thing with the 121B is from the turret you do have the 2 weak points, which are the cupolas. They're relatively small, they're no pattern cupola, but they definitely can be hit, and people will aim for them instinctively because they're a cupola. So make sure that you don't go doing anything stupid where you're exposing too much or for too long those cupolas, because yeah, eventually you will get hit, unfortunately. But with 4,900 damage under the belt, it's time to do something else. And so what he manages to find is a 121B's backside, who's actually pushed up in to try and take out their base. And this position can offer you that shot, so there's one key position you can use in your own games to hopefully deal a bit of damage extra to what you might have already understood. Now, the T110E3 does make a hard push, and this isn't necessarily a terrible decision from the E3, but I probably wouldn't try it against the 121B because it's going to do exactly that. And with the team support of the 268V4, which isn't yet nerfed, but is coming hopefully, yeah, he's taken out pretty quickly. And so he ends him very nicely, and it's time to start thinking about where the Super Conqueror and where the Hori 3 have gone, and that's exactly what he's doing now. Now, in a surprise, the VZ-55 actually relocates to the center position where we saw the Leopard 1 at the very beginning of the game, and of course that puts a little bit of pressure on the 121B, but he does exactly what he did at the very beginning, having retreated to go back to the position, and of course once again getting up here, just making sure to raise himself above the waterline, kind of wiggling up the slope if you find yourself running out of oxygen. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a few players that have done that over the period of time. I've never done that one whatsoever there, but either way, he now pushes back here, and that should open up a shot onto the location here where the VZ was, if he's still there or if he hasn't fallen back all the way. And in fact, the VZ has making the age-old mistake of pushing, and yeah, I mean, there's a rock in the way and there's a Ho-Ri which could farm him up from the left, but I mean, now the VZ is in a horrible position. He has to fall back. He low rolls, which is just fantastic, exactly what you want when you're playing up against a tank that can do 1,000 damage to you. The VZ ends up firing both shells in quick succession, and oh gosh, there's a Super Conqueror who's YOLO'd in. One into him after blocking that heavy tank and actually managing to pen the heavy tank. Yeah, you can go back to the garage, Mr. Super Fapper. But either way, the VZ is still alive, one of the other tanks that's also getting nerfed, or at least according to the super test. But he takes another shell there, one of the many that's come in, but one of the few that's actually penned. And the Leopard 1 appears to be up in the location where we saw the FV at the beginning of the game. So he puts a blind fire in there, something you should always do in World of Tanks if you can, and that enables him to get a little bit more damage. The VZ ending up pushing and getting taken out by the 26AV4, and with a 4,000 hit point advantage, the game is looking pretty good. Now, with the FV getting spotted again, re-emerging from the depths, he decides to actually push up towards the FV, putting the rock between him, and that allows him a free shot onto the Leopard 1 that's above here. The FV actually manages to hit him here, but it doesn't pen, and that leads to his demise. Very, very nice at the end, picking up, what, 8,700 damage? Ooh, takes a little artillery rat hit there for 87 damage. But now he knows exactly where the artillery is, he can go towards him, and he can also try and get a bit more damage on this Ho-Ri. But they need to be a little bit careful, because, I mean, the game is losable at this point. But if he can manage to get the arse end of the Ho-Ri, it's going to be in business. And yeah, given the fact he's picked up such a decent amount of damage so far, I'm sure he's going to be very, very happy with how the game's gone. And hopefully the Minotaur and Type 5 can start pushing towards this Ho-Ri 3. Given the fact the artillery could be a bit of a pain in the backside, he decides to try and go for him. And of course, in true artillery fashion, yep, thank you very much, Mr. Artillery, and there you go. A shot ends him in the game, but he does pick up one last one onto the artillery, and the artillery scurries away like the true rat that he is. But either way, the team end up just pushing forward, getting rid of the Ho-Ri 3, and they try and push, but the game ends up in a draw. Yeah, how annoying, considering the game that the 121B had, but what's not annoying is this next game, where we're going to see something else entirely. And the next game is, of course, on Mountain Pass, where we're going to see an early push to this position where you can get side shots on the heavies that are going to try and cross, and from here you can make a decent play where either you try and cross to your own side on the left-hand side of the map, or you can make the bridge defense, or if your team end up losing the kind of valley area, you can always push to the hill area where you can then defend from there. But this game we're going to see all kinds of things happening, and hopefully it'll be a blast for you to watch and see how this tank can play even more. Now, you've been seeing in this game that the 121 has been constantly penetrating the Tortoise, which is got pretty decent armor, and that's because the heat rounds of the 121B are almost ridiculous. 350mm. Yeah, 350mm makes this one of the highest pen kind of premium rounds that any of the mediums get in World of Tanks at tier 10, which is very, very nice to have. And of course, when you're coming up against those Object 279Es and the like, yeah, it can feel quite nice, and that is really a benefit of playing the Chinese tanks, is that typically their heat rounds are pretty good and their guns have that high alpha, which is also very nice. Now the 60TP makes a weird play here, trying to push into a 50B and a CS63. I'm assuming that given the fact that they are pushing up, that there is a little bit of team support, and so what he needs to do is try and create a crossfire. Unfortunately 50B is now pulled down, and it is going to be a bit of a 1 versus 2 against this Super Conqueror, who is now awoken, and of course yeah, not the best situation for this tank, because he's got to fight against the hold down Conqueror until the Super Conqueror comes out of the hold down location, because very good, and then gets just absolutely clapped. Yeah, I don't quite know what was going on in the mind of the Super Conqueror here. Maybe not a lot, but yeah, decides to leave his hold down location, come up to a location where he can expose his hull armor, which is trash, and then proceeds to continue to expose that hull armor, even the fact that he's been taking multiple shots here. Some nice accuracy from the 121 to plow a few rounds in. And there you go, the Super Conqueror shut down quite easily, but this game is looking absolutely diabolical with how it's going. Tries to go for that light tank to finish him off, which he does. Perfect, exactly what you want to do in this sort of game. A 60 TP here. Yeah, must have hit the very upper plate on that vehicle to bounce there, but he tries to find that lower plate easy round as you like, and it's just Farm City here potentially. Can he get one more? He can, but only a slim shot on the side of the turret, and he doesn't manage to make it. But 60 TP actually looking like a bit of a gamer here, trying to use the wreck of his light tank to go hold down, which is a pretty good play, but then again there's an unnerfed chieftain pushing him, so yeah, have fun playing against that, Mr. 60 TP, but apparently he is, as he bends him for 820. Yeah, World of Tanks things happening as intended here, but either way, Chieftain ending up just being very, very strange. The 121B could really do with pushing the Leopard PTA to help out the Chieftain, but you know, it is what it is, and this game is definitely a very good result either way. But he tries to find that kind of turret ring of the 60 TP, doesn't quite manage to find it, and of course ends up bouncing. But he can help with this Leopard PTA for once, who is trying to get those side shots into the Chieftain, and he is really able to do it quite easily here. And he really needs to try and get this 60 TP down, because the Leopard PTA can pen whether he's hold down, etc. Whereas, you know, if the Chieftain dies and the 60 TP ends up finishing him off, then yeah, it's not going to be too easy to dig him out from a hold down location. So he focuses the 60 TP, helps the Chieftain out, who turns to the Leopard PTA, flicks him, like all of the Chieftain players can manage to do apparently, and then drives over a ridgeline and hits the Leopard PTA as well. Yeah, I would definitely be slightly triggered at the fact that that one hit if I was the Leopard driver, but either way, he now pushes towards the E50 on the move, trying to work his way towards the opponents who seem to be pushing the valley, using the DPM, and there you go. The E50 straight out of the game, and hopefully he can now push towards that valley area where he can get side shots on those heavy tanks, which is what you want to do on this game. If you can, create those crossfires, and that is going to give you a ton more damage and of course increase your chances of winning, even if you don't get that much damage and you're just causing the opponents to start turning everywhere, exposing all parts of their armor that they really shouldn't be. And yeah, hopefully that's going to help you out in your own games. It's always something you should be thinking about, and if you can do it, then you should. But yeah, here we go, 6,000 damage down, and of course finds himself a Leopard 1 who's sat in a bush still, trying to of course wait for the opponents to make the play, but yeah, wasn't quite fast enough on the trigger. Maybe he hadn't had his coffee in the morning, but either way, he's found the FE 4005, and like I say, FE 4005s are just dinner for this vehicle, and there you go, he's gone as well, much like the rest of them that we've seen in these replays. And with a 777-2, yeah, he's gone too. And there we go, 7,500 damage with 2 tanks left alive, and of course they're both the ones that have been sat at the back, or at least last spotted all the way at the back of the map. But maybe they've got just a sliver of courage and actually started to move away from the base. It doesn't appear like it at this current moment in time, but we never know. Is the CC still sat on top of the ridge? Of course he is, and he manages to bounce the CC, hits him on the move in the lower plate. Always nice when RNG favours the one being aggressive. Usually it doesn't. And there you go, another round into the CC. Don't know if it penned yet, but we'll have to wait and see till he gets spotted. Not quite, I don't believe, but he now can push yet again towards this CC, who is continuously poking, and there you go, into the cheeks of the vehicle. Conqueror also up there, you know, full health heavy tanks still in base at this point. Yeah, very, very good. 8,300 damage done, and a one shot for both of these vehicles last left alive. They are, in fact, turned to the other direction to deal with the massive tanks that are trying to swallow them up from the front. But Super Conqueror, or Normal Conqueror, gets penned by the FV on the team, which deletes all of his remaining hit points, and then he deletes the CC, which is just a really nice game where he was able to support his team and come away with the victory. And hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure that you smash that like button yet again, and of course subscribe if you aren't already, because I will guarantee you that if you come up against this tank, the player in it will be absolute garbage and you won't have to deal with any players like these. So I hope I'll see you in the next one, and goodbye.